James, are you able to pin yourself now?
Spotlight, right? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you putting this on. This is an awesome clinic. I'm gobbling it up. I'm a firm believer in when you know everything, you know nothing. So I really believe that we should always educate ourselves as much as we can, because a lot of things that we know evolve. And I love the physical therapy world in the context that it is an evolving field that is not fixed, and they continue their education and they grow. Similar to what I have to do every day dealing with shoes, and it's ever-changing world as well. My name's James Johnston. I used to own 2 stores in Las Vegas for 20 years. I now run performance footwear here in Tucson for the past 9 years. My training was under a guy named Tom Brunick, who used to do the continuing education for the podiatry field. He used to educate them on footwear and how they work, and update them on new technologies and things that were going on. Over the 30 years, though, I've seen a lot of changes and things that have gone on, and a lot of times, you know, our knowledge of what footwear is doesn't always change as fast as the technology. So I love educating the public on footwear. I think it's important for us to understand how our feet work and how our body works, and also how shoes interact. So I will tell you that I had originally planned on just speaking about the 5 F's of footwear, which I will do, but I'll make it more brief. I'm actually going to touch on some of the topics that Nikole went into on plantar fasciitis and Morton's neuroma. It's fairly common issues. I see a lot of people come in the door with these issues, and I think it's very helpful for people to understand how they work. So plantar fasciitis, I call it more of a theory than it is a known medical problem. Plantar fasciitis has very little things truly known about it. So plantar fasciitis, I've done clinics with a few different podiatrists over the years, and really have soaked up a lot of knowledge. I'm not a doctor, but I do speak from a point of knowledge. For example, I had a podiatrist that I did a clinic with about 3 years ago, and at the end of the clinic, he spoke for a whole hour on plantar fasciitis. At the end of the clinic, he pulled me aside. He says, "Want to hear a fun fact?" And I said, "Okay, sure, tell me." He says, "Did you know that there are no inflammation cells in the plant? They just did a study and found no inflammation cells in plantar fasciitis, and they're currently thinking about changing the name of plantar fasciitis." I said, "What do you mean there's no inflammation cells? It's why you call it an itis." He says, they found that it still responds to the treatment of inflammation, but there were no inflammation cells on site. So he says, you know, the reality is we know less about plantar fasciitis than we let on. He says that it is a lot of things are theories out there, but I tell people all the time, do your tried and true, and then you could try the fringe. So the treatments that they have for plantar fasciitis still tend to work pretty good. So for most people, what they struggle with is the component of immobilization for plantar fasciitis. So, and that's where footwear comes in and helps. The reality is the plantar fascial ligament. The plantar fascial ligament is it gets utilized. It gets utilized all the time, and it's always having extra flexion, and it's hard for us not to use our foot. So giving it the time to heal. As Nikole said in her presentation, it needs firm arch support, right? It needs to be in a firm, a rigid environment. And so in footwear, we sell shoes that are extra supportive, designed to hold on to that plantar fascial ligament as strongly as possible. This background is making things disappear. And so we need to keep this in an immobilized position. So certain shoes meet certain criteria. So from a prevention standpoint and from a fixing standpoint, there are 3 minimum criteria you should look for out of all of your shoes. Your shoes should never bend in the arch area, should only bend in the forefoot. Your shoes should be torsionally rigid, and your heel counter should be firm. So there should be some hard piece of plastic or cardboard back here. Shouldn't bend. A lot of fashion shoes, a lot of comfort shoes, we'll say comfortable shoes because our feet like slippers, will have one, two, or three of those features not there. So, I usually recommend for most people to avoid some certain brands because the majority of their shoes don't match that criteria. Nike, the biggest brand in the world, a majority of the shoes don't match that criteria. They are a marketing brand and they're comfortable shoes, but not necessarily functional shoes. So you don't see a lot of runners truly wearing Nike, even though you would think Nike, Bill Bowerman, the histories, they should be great shoes for running. You'll see very few Nikes cross a marathon finish line. The reality is they're not really the runner's brand that we think they are. Nike, Adidas, Reebok, Skechers, Under Armour. They do make occasionally good shoes, but they're not the majority good shoes. Your brands that generally are making majority good shoes are your Brooks, New Balance, Saucony, Asics, Hoka, Mizuno. These are some brands that are well known out there, Ultra, that are doing their job the right way. They're doing homework, they're not doing marketing. And that's really a helpful aspect. You're not always paying for, those brands that I mentioned, most of the time you're paying for the homework applied, not necessarily the marketing, the name brand marketing. Anyway, so Nikole had also mentioned that there are certain shoes that have a rocker bottom, and this is kind of a fairly new trend in our industry. That shoes are starting to pop up that have a rocker bottom, meaning that it doesn't flex in the forefoot and your foot rolls across this. And what that does for plantar fasciitis is that removes the load off the forefoot that would normally happen. That removes the load that would normally happen on the plantar fascial ligament. So it takes a lot of the stress off. So very helpful tool for dealing with plantar fasciitis. It is not the only answer, but it is one of a few answers that exist out there. So shoes can be great tools for dealing with certain conditions like plantar fasciitis. Morton's Neuroma, that same shoe I just showed you, can be very beneficial because it removes the load from the metatarsal area, so the forefoot area, and so it takes tension off of there. And this is turned out to be a great fix for a lot of those issues for people, helps them get through what they're dealing with. So it's nice to know that there are choices out there. I'm going to get back to my originally scheduled presentation and discuss the 5 F's of footwear, because I think this is important. If you keep this in the back of your head whenever you're footwear shopping, you should be able to do a much better job than what most of us do on our own. Most of us don't have any criteria. So when we shop for shoes based off of price and fashion, fashion and finance. Right? Those are F's. Most people look at a shoe and say, oh, that looks good, or that looks bad, I would never wear that, that looks ugly, it looks whatever. We look at the fashion side of it, and then we look at the price, how much is it? And without any criteria, most of us just do those two things. The reality is we're supposed to operate off of fit, function, feel, fashion, then finance. So in other words, we should put them in that order, not the reverse order. So fit is always primary. It's the main reason you'll visit a podiatrist, a physical therapist, a doctor in your lifetime is related to foot-related issues, is related to shoe sizing issues. Statistically, 9 out of 10 women wear the shoes too small, and 7 out of 10 guys wear the shoes too small. That means either width or length, and that's a lot. It's a lot of people get accustomed to the sensation of a shoe worn too small because we get used to that over a long period of time, and it feels normal to have contact points. But the reality is that we need to make sure our toes are free and clear. So the way a shoe is designed to fit, including where it's designed to flex and the way it's designed to work, is based off of having 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch separation from the longest toe to the front of the shoe. And that part, a lot of people aren't used to. And so it feels very strange that you can wiggle your toes. But if you think about how we're born with our toes wiggling. And so the reality is we need to have a shoe that is snug in the heel, secure in the middle, like a burrito wrap, and spacious in the toe box. And if your shoes are laced and set correctly, your heel won't slip, there won't be any movement, there won't be any shifting, but you'll have the space for your toes to wiggle. There is a specific way that athletic shoes are designed to be laced. And so I do like to always take the time to explain that. You're supposed to make a loop on the last two holes of a shoe, similar to this. And you could skip a hole, you can use the last two holes, but either way you make a loop. Either way, I call them bunny ears. And then you go ahead and crisscross here and here. This is called loop lacing or runner's loop, or if you do hiking, they call it a Sherpa knot. And what that does is it pulls from a little bit different vantage point. It pulls down and through here, locking the heel in place, removing the gapping that would typically exist on the top of the foot. So a lot of times when someone doesn't do this, when they come in, I see their shoes look like this, very pulled apart. And that means they're really not getting any support, which is the most important part of your shoe. It's not supporting the foot because your foot is free to go wherever it wants to go. The reality is we need to keep the foot bound and held in certain areas and free and clear in others. So your fit is your biggest priority. It's the part that most people get incorrect. If you go into a store that does not measure you and does not recommend sizes, then usually you're in the wrong spot for being fitted for a shoe. You want to always be fitted. That is an important aspect of getting shoes done. Well, actually, let me pull back a little bit. When you're shopping for shoes, preferably you shop in a place that is like ours, service oriented, right? So the idea is you get measured, you get recommended items, and we should be asking questions. Just like a physical therapist does, we're going to ask you a minimum of 5 questions. I would say we're not qualified to give you any suggestions on a shoe unless I have data points, and I should have at least 5 data points before I can say, yeah, I think this is a good idea for you. You know, a good running shop, which is usually your best walking store, best comfort store, best medical store even, has generally we do foot strike analysis, where for us, we have you walk on a pressure pad and we look at how weight is distributed through your gait. And that's similar to what Nikole is going to do by eyeball, but we do a little bit more of a computerized system. We look at how shoes or your feet mechanics work, and then we recommend shoes based off of the questions we ask and the data we receive from the machinery to say this is the kind of shoe that we think would make the most sense for you. In an optimal scenario, you'd also have an old shoe with some history and wear, and we'd also look at that to get some more data points. But data points are important. And so when we're going to recommend something, we need to have those data points. And so anyway, so fit is your primary, has to fit the foot properly. Function, that's our job. Our job is to recommend to you what should match the way what your needs are, right? And so you're going to say, I'm using these shoes for, I'm doing a walking program 3 miles a day. You know, I've had these issues, you know, and I've used these shoes that didn't work for me. We're gathering all this, and then we're going to say, well, I feel you need a class of shoe that makes sense for you. So we're learning whether you need a class of shoe called neutral, stability, or motion control. There's all sorts of gray area around that, but there's those are the 3 major kinds of shoes in our industry. A class of shoe called motion control is designed for flat arches. So they have a different shape. If you look here, this shape's more like a 2x4 in its shape compared to a shoe like that. Let's see if we can get that to show. Maybe not. Anyway, so a shoe designed for an arched person versus a non-arched person is going to shape differently, and it's going to work differently. So it has different things that can help or hurt you. The shoe for a flat arch is because a flat arch foot type is hypermobile, has extra play. This limits some of those extra plays. That's the idea behind it. It's very firm in its materials that it has. The class of stability is designed for somebody who has an arch but a weak ankle, and they overpronate, they overroll. And when they overroll, this has a device on the medial side that's firmer than the rest. You can't really see it because it's the same color, but this piece right here is a firmer piece that limits the foot's collapse off towards the big toe. So for somebody who has a fallen arch, that's 70% of us are fallen to flat. So these 2 shoes meet the vast majority of us. 30% of us fall into a category called neutral, meaning we have an arch and that we don't roll excessively to the inside. We roll to the middle or towards the outside. And this category of shoe is designed to let that foot work naturally. That's the purpose behind this class of shoe. Those are the three major classes. Then there's fringe shoes, I call them, things like this, where they're called maximalist cushioning. There's minimalist shoes. There's all sorts of variations. But all these shoes I'm referring to right now are forward motion activity shoes. So not things like pickleball. This is meant for things like walking, running, even daily wear, but usually not for lateral activities that exist out there. There are other shoes completely for that. But these shoes are designed specifically to address people. There's different people, different needs. And so this is our tools to help you get the correct shoe. Now, the challenge is, a lot of us are getting used to shopping online, and that really is difficult to do with footwear. So the fit is variable. Shoes fit bigger, smaller each season. So optimally, you make it in. We do operate off of appointment, so that does help keep the traffic down, and we do try to keep the right amount of staff here, so we can make sure that I have you come when I have more staff, for example. So at the end, I'm going to put up a phone number so you can call and set up an appointment if you want to come on down and get a foot analysis done. And so the function portion of it is very individual. That's our job, to help you figure out the function. The feel is your job, your tastes, and we have to learn your taste while you're here. And so we try multiple different shoes on you to determine your categorization. Do you want a firmer ride? Do you want a softer ride? Or is your requirements to have a softer ride or a firmer ride? So there's a feel component of it. That's your third F. That we do listen to. I pay attention to it. I hear what you say on it. Sometimes people don't even know what they're supposed to be looking for. I can't tell if this feels right or not right. It feels different. And so I do listen to keywords that you may say, things like this one feels more natural. This one feels lighter. A lot of times our feet can't feel weight, but our feet do know something that feels good. And so the lighter, it usually means that it's fitting you better, is the way I've always summed that up. Anyway, so you have fit, function, feel, fashion, your taste. If you find a shoe that 2 or 3 shoes that meet the first 3 criteria, then you can bring in the criteria of fashion. Which one do I like the looks of better? And finance. Actually, that's a topic I do want to spend a minute or two on. The average price for a technical shoe where homework has been applied is about 130 to 160. If a shoe is lesser than 130, ask why. If the shoe is more than 160, ask why. That is the bread and butter of our industry, is most of those prices right there. Once a shoe, and there's nothing wrong with a good sale, because as the shoe discontinues at the end of a year, that's usually when you'll find the sales. Nobody's allowed to sell a shoe at a lesser price until it is discontinued. Our industry now is kind of dictated by the manufacturers. For example, New Balance will not allow me to sell a shoe for anything less than the price that the MSRP, until that shoe is discontinued. So I have to sell that shoe. If it's meant to be 130, it's 130. I can't sell it for 120. I can't sell it for 110. And they will pull the line from us if we do. So they consider it to be a helpful thing for brick and mortar retailers, because it keeps the online world from keep changing the prices up. But generally speaking, that is the rule of thumb on almost all good technical stores and good technical shoes. So anyway, 130 to 160 regular price. Nothing wrong with a good sale, but always know your regular price. Manufacturers, let me use New Balance as an example. Manufacturers like New Balance have 3 tiers nowadays. They have a department store tier. Department stores usually $80 and under. And they are usually, I call them Payless versions of their shoes. They create their own knockoffs. They have a shoe that maybe looks just like this one without all the insides of what you expect New Balance to have, but it does have an N on the side. And a lot of times people buy because they like the way it looks. So be leery of those. They have big box. Big box would usually be what you'd find at Dick's Sporting Goods. And those are generally your gym shoes. They have okay stuff inside. Usually they're from 80 to 120. and then your tech stores, which would be like us. Tech stores are client driven. So the idea for us is we learn with you, we evolve with you, we help you, guide you along as things change. We can adapt and change to a different shoe if we need to, but it's all about here, not all about here. This is a tool. This is also a tool. So we help get you there. Excuse the finance portion of things and your companies. Always know that your tech brands are intending well, but sometimes they do mess up. They have bad shoes. So I have people come in all the time and say, I don't wear Asics. Okay, that's fine, but the idea is that it's each model is its own designer. So if you say you don't wear Asics, you've shut down maybe the right shoe out there, right? But if you say I don't wear Asics version 2000, I have a 2000 model, then that makes much more sense because your bad experience was related to one bad model of a shoe. So designers in today's world go from brand to brand. There's about 20 designers who make the technical models, and they are biomechanical engineers, and they are very good at what they do, but they travel, they're not tied into one brand anymore. Years ago, if you had New Balance, you had one designer made all the New Balance shoes. Nowadays, that New Balance designer also worked for Brooks and also worked for Saucony and also worked for Hoka 11. Yeah, they go from brand to brand. So always understand that it's not about the brand, it's about the model. Each individual model is a signature of its own designer. So it's being brand loyal doesn't do you any good in this industry anymore, but being model loyal is very good. Usually if you keep the model, the goal of a good manufacturer is to keep the client. Once in a while they lose you, but the goal is to keep the client. Anyway, I think I hit on those 5 F's, and I'm trying to stay under the I know I'm speaking over the time. So let's see if there's any questions for me. Let's see. Oh boy, lots of questions. Merrell shoes are good shoes. So Merrell is a good brand, and not all versions of the shoes are good versions. And yeah, so the criteria of a good shoe is it should bend in the forefoot, torsionally rigid, and a firm heel. That's correct. Firm heel counter. So a piece in the back. Yeah. Someone wants to know what kind of shoes I'm wearing. Today I'm wearing Mizuno, but tomorrow will probably be Brooks. And the day after that it'll probably be Hoka 11. I do sell tennis shoes, but I mainly do them by special order. I do have a few that I keep in the shop, but because there's such different criteria, I don't have enough bandwidth, I guess, enough space to really sell the selection of tennis shoes to be considered a tennis shop. So I don't really consider myself to have a lot of tennis shoes, but I will measure you, guide you along, order them for you, and I guarantee are fit. So when they come in, they don't fit right, you're not responsible for them. Dunham Boots, I have an open account with them. They have bounced around a lot over the years. They used to be owned by New Balance, and they've kind of dinged around a little bit. So I will say that I order them up on occasion, but I'm not as familiar with them as I used to be. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question. Birkenstocks, it's an interesting question. So on a conversation about arch support, so it was brought up earlier, arch support is very helpful in the context of we need the cantilever of the foot to stay functional. Birkenstock fills that void up. So if you fill up your arch, your foot becomes a seesaw. And seesaws are not always very good if you're doing a lot of walking or if you're active on your feet. But that firm support under the arch can keep the foot from spreading out so much and reduce a lot of leg fatigue. So for a lot of standing, I'm a fan of firm arch support like you would get out of a you would get out of a Birkenstock. But for running shoes, they have opted to choose arch support to be a little bit different. Just FYI, it's a trampoline in a running shoe. So you put your hand inside of a running shoe, you really don't feel an arch support like you used to anymore. And the reason is they use the wall of the shoe to be a bouncing arch support. So you put weight on it, it spreads out, and then it bounces back with you. It emulates your arch rather than replaces your arch. So it is very helpful to have a good arch support, but be careful of having too much arch support, I guess. Let's see. For picking out boots, pointers for picking out boots is follow the same criteria I give you for athletic shoes. It really is still the same. It needs to be supportive. Some boots can really get there. So just a matter of finding a good brand and a match for you. For diabetics, the most important thing is socks. I can't emphasize enough having a wicking fabric sock and a well-fitted sock. So I've done actually a presentation for a diabetic group years ago, and we spent 20 minutes talking about socks. And so you don't want to undervalue your socks. Socks are an investment worth making for diabetics. A blister is not acceptable. And then fitting. A lot of people who have diabetes, not all, but a lot of people with diabetes have width concerns, and we need to make sure we address the width concerns. So we always fit for the widest point of the day. So when you come in, make sure you want to come in when your feet are swollen or at the end of a day. But fitting is the most important thing for diabetics. There are some specific needs that may come about, like neuropathy and things of that nature. So when you come in, please let us know all the criteria. We'll make sure we match you to that. Morton's Neuroma, I would lean towards things with rocker bottoms. So that would be my emphasis. It's not the cushioning level on most of the shoes with the rocker bottoms is pretty high. So they're very padded, very cushy. So I would encourage you to get or at least try on some of these new rocker bottom shoes. They do make quite a difference. The shoe's designed for high arches, which is not necessarily a supinator. You can have high arches and overpronate. So this is why it's so important to do things like what we do with the pressure pad. It is not a black and white world to say that somebody with a high arch requires a certain kind of shoe. I could say that statistically, someone with a high arch requires a shoe for neutral foot type, but it doesn't mean that you need a neutral shoe. So I would have your foot analyzed before answering that question. Stability is designed for somebody who is rolling extra to the inside or the big toe. Somebody who rolls excessively, so that motion is called overpronation. Some people know that by having calluses on the inside of their big toe. That's one way you could tell that you overpronate. So stability is designed to address that. Ooh, somebody wants to get into the topic of barefoot or five-finger shoes. This is actually a conversation I prefer to have in shop, if it's okay with you, because it's a long topic and it's very individual. But I am a fan of minimalist or mid-foot running, which can lend itself to these shoes. But I'll tell you that most people have injuries related to these. I see a lot of things come in because of an incorrect process of getting there. So if you want to take that approach, this is coming from, thank you. Please come on in and let's discuss it, because it's definitely, I do buy in. I just make sure that I help match people correctly. Not sure about Doc Marten boots, unfortunately. For a neutral runner, somebody who's wearing the glycerin, a light support shoe generally does not cause a problem. So the adrenaline would not hurt somebody who is a neutral foot type. A neutral foot type can wear a stability shoe, and a neutral foot type can wear a motion control shoe. So a neutral foot type, which is only 20% of the population, really has the ability to pick and choose. They don't require a shoe. It's more about what they like. And I have really cut into the presentation of Autumn, and I really should move on. So I am going to pass on to Nikole. Thank you all for being here today. I'm going to pass on to Nikole. Let's see, how do I do this? this again. Please don't leave. Autumn has an awesome presentation. Let's see, make host. I think I did it.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Hi, Autumn.
Hi. Oh, nope, wrong one.
Whoopsie. Sorry, guys. I did that one. I thought I did that one. Should be that one. Are you sure? No, it's this one. Okay. Put it in the center.
But now my notes are no.
Okay. All right, you want to just talk? All right.
Really quick, while we're getting my presentation up, I will start with an introduction. My name is Autumn Ball, and I am the head coach. There we go. Okay, perfect. Okay, so just a little intro. I own Southwest Endurance Training. Yep, thank you very much.
Keep going.
Okay, sorry. I own Southwest Endurance Training, which is a locally owned coached running group here in Tucson. Even though we are local, we do offer virtual coaching as well, which is something that we've seen a big increase in with our current COVID climate. So that is an option for you all. Bear with us for just 1 second and I can change the slide. And yeah, okay, there we go. Okay, so like I said, my name is Autumn Ball. I'm the owner and head coach of Southwest Endurance Training. My husband is also owns and coaches with me. He's not with us today, but you can see him in the photo on the slide. Just a little bit about us. My husband, Brandon, is a lifelong runner. He started running long distance he started running endurance when he joined the Marine Corps back in '95. He ran his first marathon in 2015. And just this past Saturday, he wrapped up his 12th marathon to close out the year. And I started running in 2009 as part of my personal weight loss journey. That's something I talk a lot about in our groups, is that we are a running group for the non-runners. We really spend a lot of time working with beginner runners who have never run before and they're not really sure where to start. And we give them the tools to be able to become lifelong runners. We also have a great team of coaches that work with us to ensure that every single person who runs with us has the opportunity to talk and run with the coach at every single group run that we offer. So running can put a lot of stress on the bones and joints in our feet. So Nikole mentioned that there's 28 bones in the feet and ankles. Mine says 26 because I was just focusing on the feet. You add in the ankles and then we get to that 28 number. And then we have 30 joints in our feet. It's not uncommon to see overuse injuries in the feet. And so when we run, we are actually sending 3 to 5 times of our body weight of impact up, and it starts at the feet. The feet are our base of everything. So by minimizing the amount of impact during your run, it's going to greatly reduce the risk of injuries in the feet and re-injury. So if you have been diagnosed with any of the injuries or issues that were talked about today, it is really crucial to work with your healthcare provider and a physical therapist, or a physical therapist, to ensure that you have a plan for recovery. And once you're released to regular physical activity, working with a running coach can really give you the tools to lower the risk of that injury coming back, new injuries arising because you have some weakness that were caused by the conditions that you had. Our bodies are built for movement. We have this natural shock absorbers that are built into our body, and it all starts with our feet. It starts with that arch of the foot. So by maximizing our running form, we're not only working on our overall efficiency, but we're actually working to lower the risk of injury that can be caused by running. So I want to talk about 4 simple steps to good form. I'm just going to jump right in. There's a big picture here of each of those. I'm going to go into each of them in more detail. So if you can't, I know it's a little small. So we have 4: posture, foot strike, cadence, and lean. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. We're going to look at each of these a little bit closer. So for posture, having proper posture while running is going to help create a balanced load as you shift from foot to foot during running. So we want to make sure we're standing tall. We have our chest open with our shoulders low and relaxed. Our toes should be pointed forward, core engaged. And as you run, we want to keep our head up, gaze forward, and our arms should swing easily from the shoulders with the elbows at around a 90-degree angle. So I am going to show you that and what that looks like. So for posture, what we like to do in our running groups is we're going to start by bringing your arms up nice and high. And we actually want to reach. You can even come up onto your toes and reach, 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 and stretch. And then as you bring your feet back down, what we do is we want to bring our shoulders down out of our ears, which gives us this nice long neck. Then we're going to bring our shoulders down to a 90-degree angle. And this right here, this is our base for our running form. So I have a nice long stance. My shoulders are relaxed. They're not up in my shoulders. I'm not curved forward. My core is engaged. And you can notice my chest is nice and open, which is crucial for proper breathing and running. And then my arms are at a 90-degree angle. As we start our running motion, our arms are actually going to be moving from the shoulder rather than from the elbow. So this way versus this way. So this is how we start with our posture. Bring the shoulders down, chest is nice and open and ready to go. Get our slide back up. Presenter view. Yep, that one. Perfect. All right. So that's our posture demo. Let me get here to the next slide. Okay, so foot strike is number 2. By focusing on a mid-foot strike, we are allowing the arches of our feet to actually begin absorbing that impact that I talked about, that 3 to 5 times of our body weight. When runners heel strike, which Nikole mentioned in her presentation, the arches never actually have that chance to start to absorb that impact, that shock that's being sent up through the leg, into your ankles, through your shin, to your knees, to your hips, and even into your low back. So we have our recommendation for starting to feel what that mid-foot strike feels like is we recommend that you march in place prior to a run to reinforce that proper mid-foot landing. So heel striking means that your foot's coming out in front of you, similar to when you're walking, except you're in the running motion. And overstriding can cause a braking motion, like you're actually slowing down, you're using up excessive energy, and you're not being as efficient as you can. So I want to demo really quick what that march in place looks like. Okay, so after I've done my proper setup, from here, I'm going to bring my foot up to a 90-degree angle. I can actually come this way. And then I'm going to bring my foot down, and you can see as I lower my foot, the ball of my foot is the first thing that touches the ground. This is what we want when we run. So then as I place my foot down, you can see my heel is the last thing, and then I'm going to bring this foot up to as close to a 90-degree angle as you can, and then I bring my foot down. And this is what we practice with that nice open chest, arms at a 90-degree angle. So we are marching in place. Okay. Next is cadence. Cadence is another factor to consider when working on your running form. Cadence means how many times your feet are hitting the ground in 1 minute. So the most efficient and elite runners typically have a cadence around 180 strides per minute or more if they're a sprinter or they're a little bit more in that elite category. Ideally, having a cadence between 170 and 180 is optimal for beginner and intermediate runners. A quicker turnover of your feet means less time spent on the ground, which translates to less impact sent up through your feet and your ankles. So we want you to aim for 170 to 180 strides per minute. To find your current cadence, if you're out on a run, we recommend that you've done a little bit of a warm-up. You can count the number of times your right foot hits the ground for about 20 seconds, for 20 seconds, and then you're gonna multiply that number by 6. And that's gonna give you what your current cadence is. And then you'll have an idea of where you're at versus where you wanna be. There are also several watches that can track your cadence if you have the technology. If you're an active runner and you have Garmin's, Samsung's, Apple watches, there are tools that can help you count your cadence as well. We really want to make sure that you're running light and avoiding that excessive pounding as you run. Quicker, smaller steps and keeping your feet under your hips is what's going to allow you to easily start to increase your cadence. And let me give you an example of cadence. So in our groups, we actually work on cadence by utilizing a metronome. So this is a portable metronome. It's very small. It actually clips right to our shirts when we run. All of our coaches carry these. So when we're actually actively coaching, we are working on cadence all of the time. So there's a little button. You can hear that. It is set for 170 beats per minute. So while we're running, if you can just tilt that down towards my feet, we're gonna run in place and hit that beat every single time. Every time you hear a beat, your feet should be hitting the ground. This is a really great tool to start, wrong button. This is a really great tool to start practicing your cadence and working on increasing it. So once you find what your current cadence is, then you can slowly start to increase it by utilizing a metronome. What we do like to let our runners know is that cadence is not something that a lot of people typically think about. So it can be challenging at first if you've never practiced it before. So please be patient with yourselves and just keep working on it. And lastly, number 4, lean. So proper lean helps to promote that midfoot strike landing that I talked about at number 2, It makes hitting that cadence actually easier. Having good ankle mobility, stability, and strength, it's crucial for minimizing the impact of running. So when we talk about lean, if you look in the photo on the slide, you can see that he's leaning from his ankles without actually bending at the waist. Flexing at that ankle is going to reduce unnecessary muscle strain caused by toeing off and by pulling yourself along by that heel strike. You're actually pulling from your feet versus using gravity to your advantage. So again, in the photo, you can see that his head is slightly in forward of his feet, and that's allowing gravity to help pull you along. You're actually almost falling into those next steps versus using your feet to pull you along through your run. So a great demo I have for this one, that's okay. So I'm going to use the wall here. So for this one here, we want to be lined up on a wall. We're going to start with our arms straight. I'm going to actually put my arms right up against the wall. My toes and my feet, my toes should be facing forward and my feet should be together. Now from here, I'm going to take a small step back. So I'm actually doing a plank against the wall. Now from here, I'm going to, can you see me okay? Yes. You might want, I don't know, off to the side of this here, it might be a little easier. So from here, you can see I'm doing a plank. I'm going to bring my knee up to a 90-degree angle. Yeah, you'll need to see my feet. There we go. All right. So you can see my feet. I'm going to come up to a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to actually do the march in place just like I did, except now I'm leaning against the wall. So I'm going to bring my foot down, and I'm going to bring my next foot up. Bring my foot down, bring it up. So by leaning against the wall, you can see the lean that's created at my ankles versus at my waist. As this starts to feel comfortable, then we can actually turn it into a plyometric drill where we do a fast change of our feet. And then we can do it with the metronome and we can start to get that faster running motion. This lean forces me to land on the ball of my foot versus on the heel of my foot. It's very unnatural to land on my heel here. It's very natural to come straight down into my feet. Thank you.
I learned something.
All right. Let me bring my slides back up. We are almost done. Perfect. All right. So by placing your arms on the wall in that particular exercise, you really get that feeling of your core being engaged to protect your low back, because it doesn't allow you to lean forward at the waist. The wall is really creating that nice strong core. And that's really how you want to feel when you actually start your running motion. Excuse me. All right, so here's a quick little slide that kind of shows you, very similar to what Nikole showed, the heel strike versus good running form. All of the things that I talked about today, these are all the things that we work on with our runners in our group. Southwest Endurance Training offers group coaching in 10 to 12-week cycles, multiple times throughout the year. We kind of do everything in these cycles because we all typically train for the same distance or the same race throughout the year. In addition to consistently working on form, we work with our runners on intervals, pacing, long run fuel and electrolytes, race day practice, pre and post run stretches, foam rolling, all of those things that tie in to feeling good when you run. We work with local and online businesses and race directors throughout towns to get discounts for our runners. And we really pride ourselves on being welcoming, non-competitive, and a supportive group that really is affordable for all. So if you're interested in any of the things that we talked about, we are always open to doing one-on-one consultations. If you're unsure about whether or not our groups are going to be something that you might be interested in, you can check us out on our website, Facebook, Instagram, and Strava. My contact info is actually also right there on the slide if you'd like to contact me directly. Our winter training session begins right after the holidays. We're looking forward to kicking off 2021 on the right foot. And like what was mentioned in the beginning by Alexa, if you are hesitant about group training, or if you're unsure if working with a coach is something that might be right for you, we do offer a free 2-week trial. The code is at the bottom of the slide. We do require that you register so that we have your information, so that we do an email that tells you where we're running every week. So to register, you just visit our website. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions if there's any. I'm not sure where to go for questions. Whoop. Stop share. Okay, let's see if there's any questions. Let me scroll up here and see if we have any. Bear with me for just a moment. Can you? Yep.
So if you have any questions for Autumn, please write it in the chat.
That's the first one. Okay, loving the physical examples. Okay, now I see it. All right. Whoops, I went too far. Can you start a? Lost it again. Okay. Do you know if taller runner 6'4" would have a slower cadence? It seems as though basing 180 off a pro runner who is 6 to 8 inches shorter is offset biomechanics, or is it just a universal true number that you should work towards? I'm more in the 160 range. I like to use my husband a lot for this example because he is actually 6'4". His cadence is consistently 180 or higher, depending on the type of workout that he's doing. If he's just out for a casual running for fitness, a conversation-based run, 180 is exactly where he typically is. And then his speed work is usually 180 to 190. So even though if you're taller, being able to get that quick turnover is actually possible, what it's based on is your stride length. So what we don't want to see is your stride out in front of you. We really want to get that length of stride out behind you so that it's pushing you forward, it's propelling you forward, and you're utilizing gravity to the best of your advantage. Keeping your feet under your hips when you land is how you're able to get that quicker turnover. It is absolutely possible, but it's something you definitely need to work with. And if it's something that you've never worked on before, that's where a coach can really be handy, because they can really start to show you more in detail of where that foot placement needs to be, we can utilize technology, we can take video, and we can kind of start to show you where your stride length is and how to shorten that and make it easier for you. Can you start running training program if you are already managing plantar fasciitis? Yes, you can. You just need to have the proper tools in place to make sure that your feet are being supportive. So making sure that you start with proper exercises and stretching that's going to loosen those muscles prior to running, and proper footwear. Proper footwear is crucial to any run program. That's the number one thing that we talk about with all of our runners. Once you have a solid pair of footwear or inserts or both, depending on your level of inflammation and pain, then it's a lot easier to start a running program. We highly, highly recommend a run walk program for people who are re-entering into running if they are coming off of an injury program, because it really allows a more gentle introduction of that running and that impact. And people also find, especially as we start to get older, that their speed is increased by just adding in that short walk break. It allows your legs to stay fresher longer, and you encounter less fatigue as you go on throughout your run. So absolutely you can. SWET is awesome. What an education. Social running is so different and fun. I am a huge, huge supporter of group runs. So thank you very much for the shout out. I appreciate that. Do you know of anyone in Tucson who does a training group for people to walk properly? As of right now, I do not know of any group in Tucson that's a walking group with coaches. That being said, in 2021, it is SWET's goal to start a walking group with coaches. We have 3 people that are currently going through a certification to become a walking coach versus a running coach. And there are some differences. It's not something that we offer right now because we really wanted to make sure that we had that knowledge and that certification behind it to make sure that we are giving the best advice possible. So if you're not on our email, we send out quarterly emails. You can go right to our website and actually sign up for our newsletter. If you do the contact us, it'll input all of your information and it will automatically add you to our email list. That'll keep you in the know for when we actually have that program ready to go for you. It's on the slide, but yes, we can put it in the chat. I'll add the website here in just a quick second. I'm touching the wrong button here. Yeah. Would you please speak on some shin splints and how that plays into running? Oh, shin splints are not fun. The number one reason why people get shin splints is because they have tight calves. The back of the leg is really tight and it actually pulls on the front of the shin and it can create shin splints. The number 2 reason is poor footwear. So not having proper footwear can really cause a lot of issues. So that's kind of the first thing as a coach that I'm going to look at is what are you doing pre and post run to help support looser calf muscles? And then I'm going to take a look at your footwear and I'm going to recommend if you go on over to James's store and take a look and get some new shoes. If the level of pain on shin splints is substantial, it might be time to do a little bit of rest and recovery and working with your healthcare provider and a physical therapist to really start to build those muscles and create some strength and stability, then reintroducing running. We've had several runners that is something as simple as just adding in proper pre and post run stretches and new footwear was enough to alleviate those shin splints. Do I do private training sessions? Yes, we do. However, because we are primarily a group training, the group training allows us to keep the costs much more affordable for the masses. The one-on-one, affordability is an issue. We, both my husband and I also have regular full-time jobs. So we want to make sure that we are giving you the most amount of like one-on-one time. And we are able to do that in the group setting because making sure that we have the same topics that we're talking about from coach to coach, all of those things. And we're able to run with each person in that group setting and give that feedback immediately. For the private sessions, it is more of a specific type of training that you might need. Maybe you're having an issue working on hills. We can do one-on-one training in regards to coaching on hills, if that makes sense. All you need to do is just reach out to us. I can ask you some more questions and try to work it from there if that works for you. How is quicker turnover possible? Quicker turnover is possible by keeping your footsteps smaller, keeping your feet under your hips, and really working with that metronome and really starting to drive that higher cadence into your muscle memory. It does not happen overnight. It is a process. It takes a while. And sometimes the metronome, it can be a little overwhelming. So you want to find out what your current cadence is and then work on slowly increasing it a couple of beats per minute at a time. Is quicker turnover the key to winning a race if everybody is running at 180? Not necessarily. There's a lot of things that go into winning a race. Something that we do at SWET, we don't win races, and I'm not even going to try to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. That's not what our group does. Our group is about running for health, running for fitness, and getting people out in a group that is non-competitive. I know coaches here in Tucson that can get you to win a race. So if that is your goal, let me know, and I will be more than happy to recommend a coach that's here. And so, yeah, that's just, we're more of that social coaching. You're not sure what to do and how to improve, then we can get you started with that. We do offer speed work as part of our training program. You will get faster. We have quite a few clients that win their age brackets, but they don't win the whole race. And there is a question on here that I think is going to be for Nikole, because I did not recognize the term. Nikole, if you want to take a look at that.
Patellar tendonitis.
Suggestions for infrapatellar tendonitis. Okay, so yeah, pain at the bottom of the knee area or patellar area. So
Go ahead.
Okay. A couple things. Strengthening the quads would be a good one for you. Strengthening the glutes. So kind of like on the presentation there, any hip strengthening exercises can help out with that. Also too, if it's more walking or running related, the amount of impact you're getting on your legs. So making sure you're not going too far forward, bringing your leg too far out, just like Autumn was talking about as well. And not bouncing too much to put impact on that knee. So it's a lot of different things. Also too, some stretches before running or walking are good as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
If there's anything else you want to cover there too.
We've got some pre and post run stretches that can definitely help. A lot of times what we see is the muscles and tendons. If you're feeling pain in your knee, it's not technically usually in the knee where the injury is. It's usually the muscles or the tendons that are around it, above or below it. And they start to pull and you actually feel it in those areas. So yeah, we can show you some dynamic stretches that can definitely help. Did that one? Yep.
Okay. Nikole. Okay.
James's information. Looking forward to walking training. I'll definitely keep you guys posted.
Win a race.
It's not a guarantee, definitely. How large are our groups? That's pre-COVID. All of our groups combined, all of the distances, 5K, 10K, half marathon, and full marathon, we had around 150 registered runners. Obviously, those runners, we didn't have everybody together at one time. All of our groups are separate. Right now, during COVID, we have approximately 75 registered runners. That was our last session. It just ended at the end of October, and our marathon program just ended up this last Saturday. So that's typically at each individual run, we have between 5 and 20 runners. We are running outside. We change our locations often, and we do require face coverings during our run to ensure the safety of everybody, to make sure that we're doing the best of our ability to protect you and your loved ones from any COVID related issues. I think that's it for questions. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Nikole. If anybody has any other questions, don't hesitate to email any of us.
Great.
Okay.
Yep. You're good. Okay. Did have one question I did not answer earlier. It was
they're still
what
on.
if you're still on? What causes muscle degeneration for elderly men unable to walk or stand up? Where do feet come in with this? There's a lot of different things that can come into play with degeneration. Age is one of them that can affect muscle tissue, but that's something you can work around though too. Different types of conditions is another one. And then activity. So if you're not as active, those muscles aren't going to respond to that. They're not going to be working as much as if you are trying to move around at least a little bit. If you're having trouble walking or standing up, there's still exercises you can do to address that. And I'm happy to show you those, or any of the other PTs in the clinic can show you those as well to kind of modify that so that way you're still staying active. And especially too, where do feet come in with this? It could be just foot and ankle strengthening. So we're figuring out what muscles are weak, what do we need to get stronger. Mobility in the joints. Is there a joint that's not as loose that we need to work on loosening up? And then hip strength can also play a part in this too. So you can put more impact on your feet and more work if there's some issues stemming from the hip. So it's just very multifactorial. I have to take a look at the whole leg to get a better idea of that though. But we can talk about that more over consultations as well. All right.
Pass it over to Alexa.
All right. I'm going to pass it over to Alexa for marketing. She's going to talk to you guys about a couple things as well.
Just make a host.
Oh, hold on
It
a
was
second.
right on there.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't think I need to be made a host. I'll just,
Okay.
You sure?
yeah, I don't have anything to share, but if you guys are interested in a free consultation, if you could put your name in the chat box, or I'll put my email address and phone number if you want to contact me that way. And I will be sending out a 10 burning questions, which Nikole created. It's 10 of the most commonly asked questions on foot pain. I'll send that to your email probably on Monday. And yeah.
We'd just like to say thank you to Performance Footwear.
Thank
and
you.
James and SWET and Autumn. And yes, if you are interested in any of this, so a free consultation with Body Central, write your name in the chat or contact Alexa via email. Same thing with Performance Footwear. Go to the store or message James, and then same thing for SWET. Go ahead and go to their website. I think all the contact information is on there, as on her slide as well. So thank you everyone for joining us.
Yes.
And Alexa, I'm sorry, did you have anything else?
No, just keep an eye out for that email on Monday.